I'm so excited that you've taken time out to tune in to the Ella Johnson Show. I hope you enjoy the broadcast. So sit back, relax, and I'll see you at the end of the show. One day someone asked me, Ella, why do you do talk shows? Like, why is this so important to you? I said, because I want people to know that God does use us. Because sometimes things don't happen to you. They happen through you. And now it's time for the Ella Johnson Show, where we set the table for real talk conversations. So stay tuned. It's all coming up next. The Ella Johnson Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ella Johnson Show. I am so excited again. We were here last night, and I did a video, and I said, don't miss my show. Well, listen, we had an interesting conversation last night. It's American Education Week, and the Ella Johnson Show wanted to set this time aside for our educators. Kathy, and to all of the educators out there, you guys deserve a round of applause.
Thank you.
I wish I had a button I could just clap. Because, I understand why we have to celebrate the American Education Week, because our educators get a bad rap sometimes, Oftentimes you're underpaid, overworked, and we get it. And you help shape the way our children think. You're helping to mold our young people. And for that, I am grateful, because I have grandkids that are still in school, and nephews and cousins and all the sort. So we just want to say thank you. All right. Yay. But I want to thank you all, first of all, for tuning into the Ella Johnson Show. Again, you could be doing anything else tonight. I mean, you could just be watching football or doing all kinds of things, but you decided to tune in to the Ella Johnson Show. And I am so happy about that. If you are watching from Facebook, do me a favor and just hit the share button so that your family and friends can hear what we have to say tonight. You may have some educators in your family or on your timeline. If you're watching from YouTube, thank you so much again. Just do me a favor and subscribe to my channel while you're there. So I am, again, so excited, because this is my way of also being a part. I am a part of the Borden Project. I'm one of their ambassadors, U.S. ambassadors, and I represent Florida. So obviously a lot of the things that I talk about will pertain to my state. However, a lot of it can pertain to all of the states, the entire country, even the world, as you saw from last night. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're here for tonight, because I represent Borden Project, and we have a fundraiser, and we are bringing awareness to you about what's going on beyond the border. That's what I did, my subject tonight, it's beyond the border, because we think, and we get wrapped up sometimes in us here in America, when we don't realize, if you're not careful, we're starting to slip up, okay? And starting to look a little bit about some of these countries. And you're like, oh my gosh, Ella, are you serious? Yeah, that's why I'm glad you tuned in tonight, because you'll get to see that, yes, these other countries beyond the border, yes, they're hurting. We're all responsible for them as well. So I want to welcome my friend and my guest for tonight, Kathy Bell. Kathy has been a Florida educator for over 30 years, guys. 30 years. Not 2 years, not 3 years, but 30 years. So when someone sticks with it that long, they must love it. And she said that she does. Now, she taught multiple subjects when she was in school. And one thing that she shared with me a lot of, and we talked about it last night, she shared a story about one child we called him Marcus, but we talked about him and how he inspired her. And I was inspired by how she inspired him, you know? But she shared that story. And I think it's so important because you would think she was talking about a child in one of these developing countries, but she was talking about a child right here in the United States. Now, yes, we're going to be talking about developing countries tonight, but her story was about a young man right here. So I just want to welcome you, Kathy, to the Ella Johnson Show again. Kathy is also my friend. She's a friend of the show. She's a longtime friend of it. She's a permanent friend to the show. How about that? Like she's always got a seat on the couch here. But welcome, Kathy, again to the Ella Johnson Show.
I love being here. It's a great job. Thank you for the honor. As you well know, education is very dear to my heart. There, and I'm very, very passionate about the things that we're going to talk about tonight. And it just means so much to me that you've given me a microphone to be able to share things with as many people that we can share it with. And just really try to help, some just average parents and citizens be more aware of what's happening in American education today. Because if you're not involved in it in the day to day aspect and the day to day workings, maybe not even in the administration of it, you don't realize a lot of the politics that are happening, what's being done with money, and it's really amazing. And when I was a teacher, I did have that opportunity to do all of those things. I had an opportunity to negotiate with the teachers union. I had a opportunity to be on the administrative side and run grants and see how funding came and work with the Department of Education. So I've had a lot of different experience other than just working in the classroom. I studied the history of education quite a bit. Um, and the interesting thing is we've been very slow to change. And I'll talk more about that a little bit um, tonight because it it needs to get our attention.
Absolutely. And what I want you guys to think about as we go through this broadcast tonight, education is a basic human right.
Yes.
Like every single person that walks the face of the earth should have an education, should have room to have a good education. But let's just keep it 100. That is not what's happening, guys. And I'm not even just talking about abroad, developing countries. I'm talking about right here. And before we know it, what we know of the American education will be stripped of us.
Mhm.
And that's where we're going to start tonight, because last night where we left off, we were talking about how the president-elect Trump wants to rid us of the Department of Education. Okay. Now, let me just say this. He's not the only one. Right, Kathy?
No, he's not.
Yeah, he's not
He's
the
one
only
of
one.
many. That's why
One of many.
he's quite likely going to succeed.
So that's where we're going to pick up tonight. Now, if you guys have no idea what we're talking about, he did talk about this during his, there were hints of it. It was definitely a part of the Project 2025, but I don't think people paid attention. I think that we were just ready for the election to be over. We didn't realize what ramifications comes along with electing certain people. Now, this is not political for us. This is not about Democratic, because I'm not going there. It's a different show. Tonight, we're just talking about what's real. And what's real is that on the table is the Department of Education. Now, Kathy and I are going to break some of that down so that you guys can understand, what does it mean if he succeeds and does get rid of the Department of Education? First of all, Kathy, what types of things does the Department of Education handle?
The main thing, the main thing, as we discussed last night, the main thing that the Department of Education handles is they're like the big brother of the entire nation, and they have the big picture in mind. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of why you need a primary care doctor. The primary care doctor really oversees what all the different specialists are doing to make sure they're not stepping on each other's toes. And if one specialist is prescribing you one drug and another specialist is prescribing you something that would be in conflict with that, the primary care steps in because they have the whole picture. They have the full picture, and they can say, wait, 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 this isn't what's best. Well, the Department of Education simply just does that. They are like the big brother over all the states, and they watch what all the states are doing. I will give you an example. Most of you would be stunned to have a chance to go into Mississippi
Ooh.
in much of the cities, the rural areas in Mississippi, and see the schools that the kids are walking to miles
Ooh.
at a time. You will think, and if you just Google there's been a lot of news attention, Google news stories on the state of education in Mississippi. You'll be shocked. I was very shocked. Um, First of all, technically, every child is given a public education, but that's if you've got a school that's nearby or that you can get to, or the farmland around you hasn't flooded for a month. So, and you're not stuck in your house. I mean, there's so many things that get that some of the kids don't even have shoes to walk to school, and it keeps them
Yes.
at home. Their parents need them at home to babysit because the parents got to go to work, so the parents don't send them to school. A state like Mississippi would embarrass the average American. I kid you not. We don't even realize what's
Well,
happening.
Kathy, I wanna pick this apart. You said kids are staying home because they have to take care of the kids. We
Sure.
talked about that last night, that
Yeah.
that was happening in Africa. Remember,
Yeah.
we were
Exactly.
breaking down the challenges that the
That's why I
kids.
said you'd be surprised. Mississippi, you would think you are looking at a third world country if you went
So,
and checked out the education system in some of the states in the United States.
but why don't the Department of Children and Families get involved? Kids can't miss so much school and no one just doesn't say anything.
Yes, but parents have a right to homeschool their kids.
Ah,
And that is a very um
fine line, it sounds
loose,
like. Yeah.
yes, and a very loose system, because
But what if they're failing?
parents do have rights, you know
But what if the
and
kids are failing?
and the Department of Education can get involved. But again, you're talking about if there's somebody in that area, or if they've staffed enough to even monitor it. See, that's the first thing. Is there enough of people in the Children and Family Services in Mississippi to monitor what's happening with
No,
education? No,
no.
there is not. There's not enough
Yeah.
people working in education. What teacher wants to go teach in the bayou of Mississippi or Louisiana, and sometimes have to take an airboat to get to school for the lowest pay, some of the lowest pay in the nation? Um, there's so many roadblocks, and then you compare that to a state like, I'm just going to say California, because there's plenty of wealthy people that live in California, and the those things really don't happen in those areas. It's non-existent. Education is a priority. Money is being put into it. In Florida, where I lived, I grew up in Alachua County, which was a
Yeah.
education community.
Yeah.
So we had the University of Florida. Even in our public schools, we had a lot of support from the
Yeah.
University of Florida. But you go 2 or 3 counties outside of Alachua County, and you're lucky if you can get a full staff of teachers, especially right now. There's many of those schools that don't even have a full staff of teachers. They have to hire parents to teach the kids for the year as substitute teachers. They've gotten to the point that if you're over the age of 18 and you have blood flowing through your veins, you can and you can pass a background check that you've never abused a child, then you can pretty much
I know
get
that
a
was happening with
temporary
COVID.
license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
let's get back
I'm
to
not exaggerating with that. And so the Department of Education, all those statistics of all those things that are happening, how many teachers, what quality teachers, how much you're paying your teacher, everything from the local level all the way up to the state level, all of those statistics get sent into the Department of Education. And they have people that monitor, just like specialists. There's somebody monitoring, you know, do they have enough teachers in the state of Florida? Do they have enough support staff in the state of California? Do they have running water in the state of North Dakota? The Department of Education monitors all that and asks those questions of the schools, and the schools have to turn in reports. I tell you what else, the Department of Education, if we want to go back again in history in the 60s, it's the federal government, it's the Department of Education that insisted on integration and that Black children be allowed to go to white schools. If that had been totally left up to the states, that would never have happened in some states, because it just never would. And Black children, minority children, Hispanic children never would have gotten the opportunity to have an equal quality education as
Well, I don't think they're getting
their
an equal
peers.
quality education now,
They're not.
even
They're
with
not.
that being implemented.
They're not.
Because if you're in a school that's not getting enough money, you're not getting the same education
Yes.
as that community that does. And I am a living
mentioned a
witness to
program
that.
called Title I last night.
Yeah.
And Title I is a federal program that specifically funds extra supplies, teachers, programs, money, schools. Some of these schools have been there for 50, 60 years now, and they're falling apart. They have lead in their pipes. The rich schools don't have to worry about that.
Exactly.
But the Department of Education monitors that and says, oh, little school in little rural county in Florida, your kids are drinking water with lead pipes. Well, here's some money for you to fix that. And the schools can apply for the federal government to step in, because they don't bring in enough tax money in that area. You don't bring in a lot of tax money in a rural area. Whereas a state like California, you bring in a lot of tax money because there's a whole bunch of people there. So it really takes somebody overseeing all that. So then, if you don't mind me continue a little bit, the question becomes, okay, I'm, Mrs. Bell in rural county, Florida. My family owns a farm. My family's always been farming. I really don't expect my kids to be anything but a farmer. So why do I care? I just want them to get the basics, how to read and write. I don't care if they learn about it.
That doesn't cut it in a competitive world.
Yeah. I don't care if they learn about algebra. Well, guess what? You need doctors in that rural county.
Right.
You need people that'll cut your hair. You need people that'll fix your cars and make your shoes and fix your teeth, and lawyers. And I mean, we could go on and on and on of the educated professions that those rural counties need. Well, they are not going to pull all of those professions that they need for the support. And that's why some of those counties don't have hospitals. They don't have doctors, because they don't raise them up out of their community. and nobody wants to move there. If I'm from California, I'm from New York, I've always
Right.
lived there, I got my education there, I know I can make it big. Why in the world would I move to a county that can't even pay my salary, in terrible working conditions, overrun, as a doctor? The only way they do it is when they can find doctors that do it just because they want to take care of people. But it's very hard. And if you go into those counties now, they're short. They're short of nurses. They're short of doctors. People have to go an hour if they have a cardiac arrest.
That's
Well, where
sad.
do you think those doctors come from? They don't just fall off the turnip truck, you know?
Yeah.
Out of the farms. They come from quality education starting at kindergarten. They start with teaching kids at a very, very young age. You're smart, you can do it, and getting them interested in learning at a young age, because then they'll go on, and 9 times out of 10, kids that go on to become, a professional or work in a profession out of a town like that will often go back to the town to work because they
Exactly.
want to give back. That's where
Right.
their family is. Sure,
Right.
they might go away for 4 years or 6 years or 8 years to study, but ultimately they're going to end up back at home because that's their roots. That's where they want to be. And so, as I'm sitting here in my rural county thinking, so what? I'm going to control everything about my kids' education. I'm not even realizing that not only is that affecting other kids, it is affecting my community. It is affecting the future of my community and the quality of my community for health education, uh, welfare. I see we have a comment that says that he is doing the right thing to have each state manage their own. Well, let me tell you about Florida. Again, this is not political. It's not Republican versus Democrat, because honestly, the Republicans during the Bush era put some of the most resources in to education that we've ever seen. That was called No Child Left Behind. So here's what happened in Florida. There's a big push in Florida over the past, um, 6, 7, 8 years for parental control, state control, local control. Florida has now had the distinction of being the 48 or 47th
47.
in the nation for a quality education.
Education.
We used to be at the top. When I was teaching in the 80s and the 90s, that was not an issue. We were at the top. People were proud to come to Florida and bring their kids. Now you move from maybe
Texas.
a place like, yeah, Texas, New York, Maryland, and you go down there and you put your kids in school, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, my kids was learning this stuff 3 years ago. What? What are they supposed to do? And then they get bored and then they're not interested in it. I've seen it happen over and over again. Or parents come in from out of state and they find that the education in that particular area is horrible. They don't, their kids are not learning. They have to put them in private
So
schools.
let's look at his comment. Let's dig into it a little bit more. He says that Trump is doing the right thing to make each state manage their own education system. This will increase the efficiency of the education system. Then having a single Department of Education that is situated in a single area and deciding what should be happening everywhere. They don't even go to these places sometimes. I
Yeah.
support his move on that.
Thank you. I couldn't see the end of the comment. So,
Yeah.
um, that helps me. Um, again, I lived this because I was teaching during a time in the year 2000 Some of us can remember this, some of us can't. The Republican Party and the federal government did a huge study on American education. I used to know the name, but I've forgotten it now. It's been 24 years. So that prompted the whole No Child Left Behind slogan and emphasis for schools, because people were stunned to find out how poorly children in the United States were getting educated. They thought our kids were all getting good educations because in the big cities they were, with the places that had plenty of money and plenty of funds and plenty of teachers. And then you add to that now a huge teacher shortage because teachers aren't respected. I'm all for teachers being in control of what happens in the classroom, but it has to be monitored at a
Yes.
higher level, because here's
Yes.
the
Monitor.
reality
Yes.
of when I started teaching. Okay, I started teaching in 3rd grade in the late 70s and the early 80s. As a 3rd grade teacher, I decided what I thought every 3rd grader should learn. That was up to me. What their handwriting should look like, what math skills they should learn. It was my decision, like a one-room schoolhouse, you know? And the problem with that is, what if my standards aren't very high?
Exactly.
Then
And what
your
if
kid
you,
that sat in
yes,
my class
yes,
for 1 year getting a 1st grade education when they very well should have been getting a 4th or 5th grade education,
right.
because I had a personal belief that they didn't need to do all that. And that is the reality of how I used to teach. Nobody came and checked on, are you teaching these, are you challenging these kids? Again, yes, the day-to-day teacher has to have tremendous amount of control because they're the ones that are there interacting with the kids every day. But the the federal government needs to set the standards for the nation, because as a nation we're competing against other nations
And we're losing that
and we're
fight.
losing.
Yes.
We absolutely are losing.
Yeah.
And when Florida has control of Florida, all they're looking at is how does Florida compare to Alabama, say. They are not
Yeah.
thinking about how the United States is matching up against the Chinese education, Japanese education. Even in England, some of the best education in the world is in England. Some of the best is in Australia. But yeah, those countries, they're run by the country. They're run by the head of the country. The education systems, they start at the college, and the research level, and that funnels all the way down to pre-kindergarten. And if you have too narrow of a view, then
And that's what I'm afraid of, Kathy, is that the you're depending on someone who has no idea what it's like to come to school hungry.
exactly.
You don't, that don't understand mental illness, don't know how to recognize
Yes.
mental illness, may have their
Yes.
personal vendettas against Black people,
Yes.
or vice versa, could have their personal vendettas against white people.
Yes.
You can't just totally rely on that, because I just don't. And another thing too that I definitely want to talk about, that I wanted to jump in here and talk about with the educational system. I think people don't understand what the Department of Education, what all it does.
They don't.
Included in the Department of Education, there's civil rights. There's an aspect of civil rights. Now, you take the Department of Education away and do it the way that Trump wants to do it, let the states handle it. What happens to those civil rights enforcements? What about the people that feel discriminated against? How are their issues going to be resolved? Because right now, the Department of Education conducts investigations and
Mhm.
issues guidance on how civil rights laws should be applied.
Mhm.
If you get rid of the Department of Education, what happens if the state says we don't need that? We
Yep.
don't want to bring this race relations stuff here. So now I can go
It's
to school
all
and
of
be
it.
discriminated against, and no one can. There's no program in place for me.
Yep.
So when people
It's
say I agree, do you know what you're agreeing to? Do you
exactly.
know what all the Department of Education does when you say I think
I
he's
think that's an
making a good
excellent
move?
question to ask. I think
Yes.
that is an excellent question to ask. You, as the average parent that drops their kids off going to school every morning and then goes off to their job, you have no idea how many people are really involved in that child's education
Absolutely.
from Washington all the
Yes.
way down. And they
Yes.
do have, they have a good influence because they're checking to make sure schools are doing their job. And their job is student growth, student achievement. Um, you know, like I said, Florida has the distinction now of being number 48 in the whole nation
Number
because,
47.
yes, 47, because uh, there was a huge movement to put a bunch of parents into the school board positions to get elected as school board positions. So now people that used to run the local education in the local counties that used to have former educators running their school boards, former teachers, community leaders that had invested time and years in those communities. Some of them have been involved in education for 20 years when they get elected to the school board. Now they have a parent that might have not even just moved, they might have just moved into Florida, and they get a great campaign backed by a lot of money, especially the government, the governor, and they elect them to the school board. And now you got somebody sitting there that really does not know what they're doing. They
And
might
they're
have
making
run a very,
decisions.
yes, they might
Oh,
have run a very successful Fortune 500 company. That's
do
great.
you know how to
And that
deal with
is a
families that
portion
can't
of
feed their kids?
education.
Do you know
Is
how to educate them? Do you know how to encourage them? Can you be a
right,
Joe Clark kind of person
right,
that knows how to go
right.
and meet the needs of that family first? I don't
When
want
kids
all
are
these
not
elected
learning, have
officials.
you researched how
Yes.
kids learn? How there's a lot of
I'm not
research
interested in
on
these
how kids learn.
agendas that people have. Right. Not
And so
interested.
just this past elections cycle, the past 2 years, and this one in Florida, many of those school board members lost their jobs because the community realized how bad that
Good.
effect.
Good.
Because 4 years ago,
Good.
they put these school board members that had no experience, put them on the school boards throughout the state of Florida. And, our governor sat up in front of the microphones and bragged on, we're going to give all the control to parents. You know what? That sounds good on the surface. As a parent of 6 children and 13 grandchildren, you better believe I want to have control and influence over
But I
what they learn and what they don't
yes.
learn.
I
But
have to say this.
I
Oh,
have
Kathy.
to
Yeah.
also bow to the experts and say, look, if my child's not learning, you're the one with the expertise. Tell me what to do.
So here's the thing. I wanted to get down in the meat and potatoes of this subject because I said people are so surface people.
Yep.
You hear what Donald Trump says and it
Yep.
sounds good. And
Yep.
that's why this viewer feels like, yeah, but
Yep.
you got to really get into the meat and potatoes of what he says. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to read a statement that he made when we were talking when this came up. Trump said he would pursue civil rights cases to stop schools from discriminating on basis of race. Now, when you hear that, Kathy, what's the first thing that you think about?
It reminds me of the 50s and the 60s, for one.
He doesn't want to talk about race. He
No,
doesn't want that to be
no,
an issue.
at
It
all.
is an issue. If nobody in America has been able to make it go away, why does Donald Trump think he is? You're going to just make it go away by just getting rid of the Department of Education? See, some of us are not blind to this. We
I'll give you another
understand
example in Florida, because that's where my experience was.
Right.
Okay. Of what happens when you put control over it. The curriculum, the powers in the Florida Department of Education decided to erase much of the history of slavery. They just erased it. They just changed it. They said slavery was good. It really wasn't all that bad. And they put that in the teaching standards. Yeah. That's what kids in Florida are learning right now today. That slavery's really not that bad. Other states hear that.
It benefited you Black people.
Yeah. And other states hear that and they think Florida's crazy. They're like, what are they talking about? But the powers that be in Florida decided that was too painful for our kids to hear. And it is painful for the kids to hear. I've experienced that.
It is the history of America.
It's history.
Get over
it. Happened.
Yes.
Just like the Holocaust happened.
Yes.
No, I personally don't like reading about the Holocaust. It tears me up inside. It's very hard for me to
Why do you
read.
think it's important for them to learn it, Kathy? Why do you think it's important?
To keep history from repeating itself, because it absolutely will repeat itself. If we
do you think it's just as important?
And we make it seem like, oh, slavery was a good thing, then guess what? We actually had a candidate for a governor, you know, right there in the South, Black man whose roots were slaves, stand up and say he thinks slavery is good and he would have some if that was legal again.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
That's what happens when you don't teach the truth.
It's money.
When you say slavery is
status.
Good, then people that don't know any better, oh, well, I heard slavery's good. Well, shoot, let's pass a law and make slavery legal again, and let's all go, you know, grab us some and put them under our.
But it also teaches, Kathy. It teaches kids that didn't go through that. It almost keeps it alive, this feeling of superiority.
Yes.
Because they're already like that.
That's exactly
this continues that.
That's
and I think it's good. Let them know a lot of the inventions of Black people. Don't make it seem like we were just slaves and we didn't contribute to this country. Don't think that this country became great
best inventions
because you were smart.
Black people.
Yes. And it infuriates me. And just like you're passionate about education and teaching kids and grooming them for this world, it's important to teach them everything. I understand that America may not like how we started and what happened, but it's real and it happened. And like you said, if we don't want it to repeat itself, we need to teach it and teach it the correct way. Don't just teach the parts. Don't let it be like Chex Mix. You know, when you're eating Chex Mix, you take out pieces you like and you leave the other stuff in the bowl.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. No, we can't treat education like that because there's a lot to gain for everyone in our history. Because my thing is, why do you teach it? Why do you teach all this other stuff? I mean, why is that so important? Because it make the education that our kids are getting, it makes them feel inferior because it makes them feel as if, wow, I don't see anybody like me in this book. I don't see any contributions we made in this book, because the truth be told, there were a lot of inventions that Black people did, but they couldn't get credit.
They just don't know about them. They don't, so they believe
and they don't get credit
for
the
only people that are smart, the only people that can do anything.
Exactly.
You know, that it's very. I mean, I can't tell you how much I've experienced that from Black children. That they just have this innate feeling that they are inferior.
But some of it's learned at home too, Kathy.
Well, yeah.
Because I know
because
growing
their
up.
parents thought they're inferior. Because their parents have been taught they're inferior. So
because
it's passed down.
we grew up, I didn't grow up thinking this because I never felt inferior
Right.
to
Because you had parents that
to
said you weren't.
yeah, I was surrounded by it. So I never saw
Right.
different as far as I was concerned, just skin color. But you
Right.
have families that still think, well, no, you don't go for that job. Well,
Yep.
no, you don't, you just stick right here. This is just enough for you.
Yes.
No, those are lies. And this is what makes me angry about not getting the full education, because if a child knows, well, wait a minute, this person actually came up with the idea for the Ford car, he looked like me, then I can do it. Tell the truth,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some things, come on, you guys ain't come up with that. So stop
Yes.
perpetrating as if you did, and
Yep.
as if we didn't contribute anything. And then when you start talking about the Bible, oh, the only black person was the man that carried Jesus' cross.
Right.
You mean to tell me out of the whole Bible that was the
Right.
only black man? Didn't he have some black parents?
How about
And
let's
some
start with
right?
Jesus, because it turns out he was actually born in Africa and in the Egyptian area. So let's start with Jesus' skin color. Newsflash: he was not white.
So Kathy, let me ask you a question. I'm glad you brought that up, because in my educational time, I learned why did America portray Jesus, this blonde hair, blue eyed white man? What was that all about? Because there's a story behind it. They didn't just come up with that. It represented something. What was that?
Well, I believe, I can't say I know this fact to be true, but I believe that they believed black people were savages. They were uneducated savages that had no morals. The Africans, no morals, no intelligence. They just, you know, were the lowest of the low of humanity. That's what I think.
They
So if they
saw
couldn't
white as pure.
imagine Jesus being, well, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
They
I didn't think
saw
about
white
that.
as pure,
Hmm.
and they wanted to make this man appear as pure as possible.
Right.
And that's why certain white people think Jesus is their dude.
Yep.
That's our dude. And
Yep.
I think that has created so much division in this country, because it's almost like there's a certain race of people that think that, well, he doesn't really love you guys. Like, he's white like us.
Right.
So, and that's not true. The Bible
Right.
talks about his hair.
Right.
He did not have long, straight hair. He had
No.
hair like wool. The last
Yeah.
time I checked, hair like wool is a little bit closer to my hair than is
Yes, it
yours,
is.
Kathy.
Then my hair.
Just saying. Not this hair, the hair under
Right.
this hair,
Right.
right? So, I mean, but we don't need to divide him, because he loves us all.
Right. Exactly.
But the people that are out here teaching need to be stopped,
Yes.
because they're lying.
Yes.
And it's affecting that little
You know
child
what?
that's in the corner
There you go.
listening
Right
to
there.
you.
When did it become okay to lie to children?
And
about
that's
history?
why I don't like
When did it
leaving it
become
up to the
okay to
states.
lie to children?
Yes. Because if you take a group of people and put them in charge of a child's education, and they don't like that child just because of the color of his skin, is he going to be taught the same as the child over here? No, he's not. Is he
And
going to
I
be
have
written up for
experienced
scholarships?
it more than once. Even in 1999,
Do tell.
my students were told, my black students, when they went to another teacher's classroom, sit in the back, keep your mouth shut, and don't cause trouble. They had no desire to. That's 1999. That's the year 2000. I'm not talking about 1959. I'm not talking about 1939. I'm talking about 1999 in the middle of Palm Beach County, one of the wealthiest in the state. Black children were told on a regular basis, sit in the back, don't make any trouble, and keep your mouth shut.
Could not be me. could not, would not, will not.
They told me
So
that as a teacher, and I didn't believe them. The first one
that's
that told me
crazy.
that, they said, "Oh, you know, when we go over to Miss So and So's class, that's what she tells us." I said, "Nah, that can't be true." "Yeah, Miss Bell, it's true." And so then I ask others, "Is that true?" "Absolutely. Happens every period, every day."
So I want to speak to the person, Ambassador Roger, Jerry Smith. When you made that comment, I don't think you understood, or maybe you did, understand that without the Department of Education, there are no checks.
No checks.
And that cannot happen in this country.
The fox are watching the hen
Because
house.
I'm telling you, they're going to do like you take the Department of Education out of Florida, and you already
Yep.
see what Ron DeSantis has done.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
We've
Even
already
To Kill a
gone.
Mockingbird.
That is so
To Kill a-
embarrassing that we are the 47th state in the entire United States for education.
Who's
So
one?
who wants to move?
Who is number one? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would say possibly New York, possibly California. There was a time Massachusetts was. That they have been in the race. I'm sorry that I have not looked it up.
I think there
I tell
needs
you
to be
what
some
else.
kind of
Guess what else?
stipulations.
Florida has the lowest teacher salary, taking into the consideration cost of living. The lowest in the nation is Florida.
Really?
And then they wonder why each school year for the past several years, they've started the year literally with thousands of openings for teachers, begging teachers to come to Florida. And you come to Florida as a teacher, you will be paid worse than a teacher in Mississippi.
In Mississippi, Kathy? Come on.
Yes.
Wow.
Florida
So
is
guys,
at the absolute. It's on I just came across the graph. It's on one of the data here. It's according to USA Facts. Average teachers by state. And Florida is the absolute lowest of the entire United States. New York is one of the highest.
and why would we want
And Massachusetts
people?
is one of the highest.
And why would we want people like that teaching our children? They're angry,
Yeah.
they're
And
bitter.
California is one of the highest too.
Teaching our
So,
children, and they're struggling. No.
You know what? There's an old saying that says you get what you pay for.
And who's suffering? Our children.
Yes.
And another, and I want to stay on the Department of Education, but then I want to go over to let people I want to share a picture that one of my friends from Liberia sent me. The Department of Education is about funding, okay? And it really caters to students with disabilities,
Yes.
low income students,
Yes.
and homeless kids. You remember when
Making
they had this
education
big,
equal for everybody in this nation.
you let every state take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is going to happen to that funding for these low income,
Mm-hmm.
this after school care for the low income,
Mm-hmm.
these disabilities? We're going to start looking just like those countries that we talked about last
They
time.
already do.
We kind of already do. I didn't want to admit that because it hurts that we are the richest country, more advanced, and we can't figure this education thing out. I don't understand.
Go interview some of the NFL football players that came from South Florida.
Why? What am I got? What? Why?
They'll
Tell me
what their education was like, and 9 times out of 10, at some point, one person throughout their life grabbed them and started mentoring them and took a special interest in them, or saw that their athletic ability was so high that they made sure those kids went to class, they made sure those kids had tutors, and they made sure those kids succeeded academically, and that's how they ended up in the NFL. Not everybody that has a lot of athletic talent can end up in the NFL, because the first step is you have to be educated.
Absolutely. And that's what
You
you
have
should
to
want.
be educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't be a professional basketball player without being educated. You can't be a professional football player without being educated.
And that's how it should be, rightfully so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So
rightfully so.
that
So
says
I
to the kids that don't, you know, those same players, they got buddies back home, and that's why a lot of them go back to their communities and give to schools, because they know what they experienced in those schools, and a lot of them are right there in rural South Florida.
guys, the purpose for me doing this during Education Week is simply because we have we got to praise our teachers. I listen,
Yes,
we all have that
yes,
teacher that
yes,
we remember from time to time. As you get older, you're going to run across some things that maybe they shared with you in the privacy of in their
right,
moment with you,
right.
and you may not have understood it then. Total
Mm-hmm,
witness to that.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
you now see those are the
Yeah,
kind of teachers that we need,
yes, that's the voice in
because
your
we
head
have a
when you get to
bleeding
be an
country.
adult.
Yes, we have a bleeding country,
Yes,
and it is bleeding with hate,
yes,
division,
yes,
unforgiveness, you name it. It is going to take something special to turn it
yes,
around.
yes.
I didn't
Ella,
say
I want to make
someone.
sure I'm watching the clock. I want to jump in here and take over for a second and make
Okay,
sure if we don't make any other point, I get a chance to make this point.
let's go for it.
Back when we first started talking about climate change, and
Okay.
Michael Moore made his movie, and Al Gore started beating the drum, we were very, one, uneducated about climate.
I am a witness. That's true.
We had no idea how, uh, just like we have no idea how the effect of a rural school in Florida can affect the entire state and nation. We had no idea how a factory in, name a state, Pennsylvania, could affect climate. I was one of them. When they first started talking about climate change, I said, that's crazy. That's just a bunch of political liberal garbage. And
Yeah.
people were sounding the horn, sounding the horn, sounding the horn, and we were all ignoring the horn because we didn't know. We did not know. We were ignorant. We were completely ignorant. So what did we do? We looked at the party, the political party those people were affiliated with, instead of the knowledge of the research that they were spouting.
Right.
And we let that affect us, just like we're doing it today. We're looking too much at what party are you affiliated with? If you're affiliated with this party or that party, then I'm going to listen to you. But if you're affiliated with the other party, you don't know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
why not go back to the research? There is so much intelligence in the world today. We can all do our own research. We don't have to
Right.
rely on other people. We
Right.
don't have to rely on anybody to teach us about climate change. It's all
Right.
over everywhere. You can find out about it anytime you want to. Well, guess what? Now the world has a major problem. Ask North Carolina when their mountains fell down into the ocean. Ask them, did they ever think that would happen? No, they did not. Their mountains fell into the ocean just a few months ago. And that was caused by the heating of the climate. Let me tell you something else. Because we talk about the interdependency of the world.
Right.
Places like these Caribbean islands, these small islands that always kind of have kept to themselves, taking care of themselves, you know, produced what they needed to produce. Well, now these monster hurricanes are coming to their islands and destroying their islands for no fault of their own, because the hurricanes are so intense and so strong because of what countries like China, America, and many other countries across the world have done. And they don't have the money. You know, when we have a bad disaster here in the United States, the government ponies up.
Right.
They cover it. They eventually
Right.
cover it, the
Absolutely.
damage, and they fix what happens. What is the Virgin Islands supposed to do? They don't have any money.
Yeah.
They don't have a money to fix that the infrastructure that they have
Right.
built over thousands and thousands of years and millennia, and the ways of life that they have developed to sustain themselves and
Yeah.
to take care of the land that God gave them. And of no fault of their own, here comes a Hurricane Maria, and Puerto Rico's gone. Gone.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And even though climate control is important as well, however, education is important too.
Yeah.
Global education is important, guys.
Yes.
I started this broadcast last night by reminding you that 58 million children globally do
Yes.
not attend school. I don't know if you guys get that. I don't know if they get that, Kathy.
No,
I got to say it again. 58 million
It's unimaginable.
children not being educated. And then you have a 260 million that don't get access to a quality education. And then we ask ourselves, why should I care about what's going on over there? You should care because it's happening here too. Let's not think we are better.
That's 58 million possible Einsteins.
Yeah, exactly. And due to no fault of their own, just like the example that Kathy just gave. Why should Americans support global education? This is what Obama said. Obama said their challenges have become ours.
Yes, they have.
Is that not what we just said?
Yeah.
And Obama said this when he was
in
in office.
interdependent world now.
Yes.
We depend on other countries depend on us. And
so we should stop saying that, because I want to show you guys a picture. That my friend, one of my friends, he's probably watching the broadcast in Liberia tonight if he's not asleep, but he went and visited a school, and I said, well, kind of share me what you experienced when you went there. And I want to show you guys. I want to share it with you. This is what it looks like. He went to a school. These kids are standing up because they don't have desks. They don't even have a classroom. They're out in the field. You see all different ages here. And this is how they get educated. Now, imagine if you had to go and stand up for 20, 30 minutes. You're focusing on my legs hurt. You're not listening to what they're saying. And in some cases, these people aren't even educated enough to teach them.
Yep.
Look at this.
Yep.
This is what it's like with these kids. Imagine if your kids were subjected to this.
Yes.
This is exactly why I joined forces with the Borgen Project, because you see those children that are out there that don't have the same pleasures that you have when your kids go to school. The Borgen Project's fighting for them, but they work with congressional leaders to do it. Because I totally believe, and this is the reason I like being a part of the Borgen Project, you have to change the laws. If we really want to make a difference, that's where we do it. I'm all for, getting on Facebook and talking about it, but you got to work with the people that are making the decisions. And that's what the Borgen Project does. And that's what I just put on our page just now. I put there for you this, so that you can see. I want every one of you to do me a favor and click on this link. This is you emailing your congressional leaders. Now, what you're going to see when you click on that, it's probably the Florida ones. It's okay. Fill it out and hit submit. I need you to do that because this is how the Morgan Project makes the difference, is by staying in their face.
Right.
Every single week, I've been emailing my congressional leaders, which are Rick Scott, Marco Rubio for now. I think he's, he just moved up, but then Darren Soto. That's how we got to do it. And I do it every week. I even go on their page and talk noise. If you know me, you probably believe that. But it's not about talking. It's about staying in their face so they can see what we need. So when we talk about all this stuff tonight that Kathy brought up about what's happening in Florida, why aren't we doing something about it? I don't understand how we can hear this and do nothing. I especially if you have a child in the school system right now, you see what's getting ready to happen. They don't stand a chance if we don't do something about it. They're depending on us to do something. This is doing something about it. Because what happens is if you fill this out, they're going to take your information and send it to your state congressional leaders. A lot of you probably don't even know who your congressional leaders are. That's sad, because decisions are being made in your state and you're not a part of it. And you
affect your
should
kids
be.
every day.
I'm telling you. So I just, this is why we have to get in control and be a part of this global education. And I said last night as well that, listen, we're our brother's keeper. That's the way I look at it. Love your neighbors. I'm not talking about people. Listen, how many of you guys, and this is the part that just does something to my spirit. We hear these words. We go to church. We praise and lift God and all of this kind of stuff. God is everywhere. He's not just in the United States of America. Okay. He has children that need to hear what we're hearing, what we're privy to. These kids, I'll be honest with you, Kathy, some of them are just happy to get a composition book.
Yep.
Just a composition book. Just give me a desk. Let me draw pictures.
Right.
Let me watch a video so I can learn some things.
Let me write
Show
on
me a
something
tutorial.
other than the sand under my bare feet.
Exactly.
Because that's what they do when they don't have books. They write on the sand under their bare feet. They scratch.
I mean,
they take
it breaks
rocks
my heart.
and they scratch into wood.
You know what I found out too, Kathy? That the U.S. is below average in math.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. Below average in math. We are above average in science, though. So that's a plus. That's good. When you hear that type of thing as an educator and having been a teacher in different multiple grades and levels, what's the reason? Why do you think that this happens and we fall so low on the spectrum?
Because we don't think globally. We think too.
Somebody's not doing their homework.
Yeah, we started out, like I mentioned earlier, with our education, we thought whatever the hired teacher thought the kids should learn is what they should learn. And we never thought to say, what are the 5-year-olds in China doing in math today?
There it is right there. That's what I would be doing. Let me go look at the best. See how they're doing. Yeah.
Because they'll run circles around you.
But they start younger though, right, Kathy?
Because you know what? It's been researched. The brain of a toddler before they're 5 years old has incredible ability to learn if they're expected to. If they're not expected to, they will not. They will not. But if they're told from a very young age, by the time you're 5, you will be able to do this, 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 and this, then they will
do it. Yeah, it's expected. You're putting that in front of them. But if you're told, look, you're only going to have maybe a job at the grocery store, that's all it is around here. That's all you're going to do. And then that's what you're going to shoot for.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with those types of jobs. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. But
Right.
let's just be real. Those types of jobs do not take care of your needs for your household.
There is nothing wrong with those types of jobs.
Yeah,
But you
there's
know
nothing
what?
wrong with it.
Those types of jobs also need to be filled by people that understand community, that understand their place in a community, that understand, you know, civil civility, you know, and understand how to manage money, understand. I mean, there's just so much that even the people who are doing the jobs that you think are very unskilled, the rest of their life requires skills. Their driving requires skills. Their buying insurance requires
Yeah,
skill. They're feeding their
right.
kids. They're not getting ripped off from the banks at the interest rates to buy a car. That's why there are so many people in America that take advantage of poor, uneducated in terms of bad car loans, high interest
Yes,
rates, bad credit
yes,
cards happens
yes.
every single day because the uneducated know no better.
And that should bring you guys to a pause. If you've ever, especially if you've ever been ripped off, I mean, you don't have to go to Africa to know what it's like
Hmm.
to be hungry. I'm
No,
just being real. Because
no,
right now, honestly, guys,
no.
822 million worldwide,
Hmm. Hmm.
822 million people are hungry. That's 1 out of 9 people one person out of every 9 you see, they're hungry.
Yep.
That's a lot. I mean, America is not broke. That's the simplest way I can put it. We
Hmm.
should be reaching out. Because when you see how the money is allocated in America from our government, it may bring you to a pause again.
Right.
You see how much is going over here for people who are hungry versus how much is going over here to people
Right.
in
Oh,
other areas,
sorry. Must be towards the end
right?
of the show. She's yawning.
It is, and I just the bottom line here is that every person in this world, in this society, deserves to have the basic things that they need to survive.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that is not happening. Let's get our head out of the sand.
Yes.
And it's getting closer home. All during this entire election, that's all we heard about was people not being able to afford groceries,
Hmm.
people not being able to put gas in their car,
Hmm.
people not being able to pay their rent.
Hmm.
Why do we think, and it's not so alarming because all the countries went through some type
Yeah.
of economic challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not the only one.
No, the
So
whole world did.
the whole world did. However, we're bouncing back, and we need to not make light of the needs that are out there in this world for everybody else. And so that leads me to my final point for tonight. And I'm going to bring you another link, okay? Because it has definitely been real these 2 nights, chatting with you guys, because this lady here has taught me a lot. Because, guys, we talk a lot before we go live, and she has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the school system and what's really going on. And it blows even my mind sometimes because I just can't believe it, because I thought we had it going on. But we have some improvement. So because I am an ambassador for the Borgen Project, we are I have a fundraiser page, and that's what I just shared on our link. And here it is right here. So I want you guys to click on that link tonight. Just do me this one. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $3. I don't care if it's $10. I don't care if it's $15. Just something, because what this money is doing is the Borgen Project is taking these funds because they helped like 116 million people with the monies that they're getting. What they do with this money is they're helping people that are in poverty to
Hmm.
live, to eat, to go to
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
obviously it's still not where we need to be because we're still trying to make things happen. Now, if you follow my page, you've seen that I have been pushing the reauthorization of the READ Act. The READ Act is reinforcing education, accountability in development, meaning that there are programs out there for these children, but we need them to reauthorize it for another 5 years so that it can continue. Rick Scott was a part of that. I believe in giving credit where credit is due. Okay. Rick Scott was definitely a part of, there were no objections, Kathy, to this, the READ Act. 2017 is when it was put in the Senate. However, we need them to do it again.
Yeah.
So every week we've been urging Congress. That email that you guys saw that I just sent, where I said email Congress, that's what you're talking about when you hit that submit button. You're asking him to please reauthorize this. But this is something that all the states doing. You're just doing it for Florida, but they're going to send it to your state. So I need you guys to do me a favor. Now, here's what happens. Let me take this off the screen so you guys can see. Here's what happens when you pay at least $25. If you donate at least $25, you guys see what that is? It's my children's book. I just got my shipment in today, so it was just in time for my show. You're going to get this book if you donate at least $25, okay? And the reason I chose to do it this way is because this book teaches children that every person in our society is important. And that's what we've been talking about all night. I'm just using what God has given me to teach children. This is how I do it. But there are other ways that we can all do it: by voting, by emailing Congress, donating to charities that are helping children less fortunate. All right, guys. Anything, Kathy, you want to say before we get out of here?
Great show. We could talk about this for another 40, 50 hours, and we probably wouldn't cover everything. But guys, I hope we've piqued your interest tonight. You'll do some of your own research. You'll talk to some of the experts in the field. You'll find out what is happening, and you'll really try to educate yourself about education, and really take that on, and not just go with the flow of what the local headline is for this week.
That's right.
And really find out what's the long-term implications of some of these decisions that we're making today.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed being here. Thank you
Yes.
again for having me on and letting me share some of my thoughts. I hope I haven't been too harsh, but I am very passionate about
You are. That's what I
education.
love about you, though, Kathy. I mean, you're always invited here to the Ella Johnson Show because you tell it like a TI is.
I do.
Right? And I like
Yep.
that. See, some of y'all didn't catch that. Yeah, she tells it like a TI is. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But listen, for the rest of you, I just don't have time to explain it, baby. Right? But I have enjoyed you, Kathy. Again, guys, the purpose was to celebrate our educators.
Education.
It's American Education Week here in this country. But I just wanted to use this because I thought this would be the opportune time to talk about what's going on abroad. Beyond the border, they deserve education too.
Right.
All right. So with that said, guys, we're going to get out of here. Looks like I have another comment over here. Let's see who. Patricia says, "Hey, Mom." Oh, hi, Mom. How are you? Good to see you, dear. Good to see you. Good to see you. I know you guys called me last night and I said I was going to call back and I didn't. So I'm confessing it in front of everyone. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show. It has been real. It always is. I don't know when I'll go live again, but I am very excited about bringing my shows back. So if you're out there and you want to share your story right here on the Ella Johnson Show, I love it. I love bringing people onto my show, sit on the couch, which that's just a literal, it's just one little thing in between me and you and the couch, and it's thousands of Wi-Fi, right?
There you go.
But you're still on my couch. So if you would like to be a guest on my show, hit me up because we may want to cover it. I'd love to share it. Everything goes here. We like to tell two sides to every story.
That's
here on
right.
the Ella Johnson Show. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Ella Johnson Show. We'll see you next time.
We are supporters of the Ella Johnson Show. We live in South Korea. We have been watching Ella Johnson Show for like a year now. And we love her show. Her show is very inspirational, motivational, and educational.
If you would like to be a guest on the Ella Johnson Show, send an email to theellajohnsonshow@gmail.com or send a text message to 407-334-6997.
We love Ella Johnson Show.